Leonardo Silva always knew life wasn't fair. He grew up in the São Miguel neighborhood, on the outskirts of São Paulo, where the streets were known more for the sound of sirens than the laughter of children. His father, Pedro, left home when he was just 6, leaving behind an exhausted mother and a son who still didn't understand the weight of abandonment. His mother, Dona Marta, was the epitome of resilience. She worked as a cleaner in 2 downtown buildings and, on weekends, took day jobs to supplement her income. Her hands were always rough, marked by disinfectant and cold water, but her voice carried a firmness that Leonardo never forgot. "Son, no one is going to put food on your plate for free. Life is a struggle, and you need to be ready to win." Leonardo took these words to heart. At school, he was the kind of student who didn't have the prettiest materials, but made up for it with attention and effort. He wore old backpacks his mother got from his employers and shoes that lasted until the end, patched with glue and tape. Even so, he stood out. He had an insatiable curiosity, asking more questions than his teachers could answer. And when he didn't understand something, he spent nights researching at the community library. At 18, he got a scholarship to a technical business school. He worked as a bakery attendant and then as a stock clerk in a supermarket, always scraping together every penny. He dreamed of attending college and, one day, having a job that not only paid the bills, but also made his mother proud. Opportunities rarely knocked on his door, but one night, scrolling through his cell phone on his way home from work, Leonardo saw a job that made his heart race. Administrative assistant at Oriane Consultoria, one of the most respected companies in Brazil, above-average salary, benefits that seemed impossible for someone in his background, and, most importantly, the promise of internal growth. The interview was scheduled for the following week. It was his golden opportunity. He spent the next few days studying the company, reviewing possible questions, and rehearsing answers in front of the cracked bedroom mirror. With the little he had saved, he bought a used suit from a thrift store. He adjusted the sleeves and hem himself, watching tutorials on YouTube. The night before, he had barely slept. He kept imagining the moment he would shake the interviewer's hand, showing that, even without a prominent surname or a university degree, he had value. He woke before sunrise, drank coffee with stale bread, and put on his suit. In the mirror's reflection, he didn't just see a young man from the outskirts, he saw a man ready to change his life. With a simple briefcase in hand and hope in his eyes, he left home earlier than necessary. The morning air was chilly, but Leonardo felt a warmth in his chest. He didn't know that the day wouldn't go as planned, and that, before he reached Oriane Consultoria, fate would place someone in his path who would change everything. Leonardo walked the streets downtown, still with plenty of time to spare to reach Oriane Consultoria. Each step echoed with the firm click of freshly polished shoes. He held his head high, as if trying to acclimate himself to the posture of a businessman. It was 40 minutes before the interview when, as he turned the corner onto Rua Augusta, something caught his eye. A luxury car was parked on the shoulder, its hood open and a thin stream of smoke billowing out. Beside it, a well-dressed woman was talking on the phone, her expression filled with concern. Her high heels seemed out of place amidst the hustle and bustle of the sidewalk. Leonardo instinctively slowed his pace. "Is everything okay?" he asked, moving a little closer. She looked up, surprised by his approach. "No. My car died halfway there, and to make matters worse, my cell phone's dead. I was using a colleague's phone who stopped by, but he had to go. I have a very important meeting in a few minutes, and I don't know what to do." Leonardo discreetly checked his watch. 8:20. He still had time if he moved quickly, but something in her distressed tone made his chest tighten. "Is there a mechanic nearby?" he asked. "There is one, but it's about 2 kilometers from here. I don't know the area, and I can't leave the car alone here." He hesitated. If he helped, he risked being late for the interview that could change his life. But his mother's words echoed in his mind. "Helping someone is never a loss, son. It's a seed." He took a deep breath. "Look, I can take you there. My car is parked on the back street." Her eyes lit with relief. "Are you sure? You don't even know me?" "Yes, I am. It's not right to leave someone in the lurch." Minutes later, they were in Leonardo's simple car, an old but well-maintained hatchback. On the way, the conversation was brief. She, still distressed, rummaged through her bag looking for something. He focused on the traffic. He mentally calculated the remaining time. Do you have any commitments now, too? She asked suddenly. Leonardo gave a brief smile. Yes, an important interview, and yet you stopped to help me. I don't think anyone should be alone in a situation like this, he replied, without taking his eyes off the street. They arrived at the shop at 8:40 a.m. Leonardo helped the woman explain the problem to the mechanic, and she made a point of thanking him, looking him in the eye. I don't know how to thank you, she said, extending her hand. My name is Helena. Leonardo, she replied, shaking her hand quickly, and I need to hurry now, or I'll miss my interview. He got in the car and drove off. His heart was pounding. Waze showed a 15-minute drive to Orion Conservatoria. He could make it just in time, but any delay in traffic would ruin everything. And, as if fate wanted to test his patience, a traffic jam formed 3 blocks before the company building. Leonardo watched the minutes slip away on his phone screen. 8:55 a.m., 8:59 a.m., 9:05 a.m. When he finally parked. It was already past 9:15 a.m. He ran up to the reception desk, out of breath, and explained the situation. The receptionist just gave a sad smile. I'm sorry, Mr. Leonardo. The position is already being interviewed by another candidate. The weight of the words fell on him like a punch to the gut. All the effort, weeks of preparation, seemed to have vanished in an instant. He left with his suit heavy, as if carrying his own frustration on his shoulders. Leonardo walked down the stairs of the Orion Consultoria building with slow steps, each step echoing like a reminder of what he had lost. Outside the sun was shining, but to him it felt like an overcast day. The noise of the city continued, honking horns, street vendors, people rushing about as if nothing had happened, as if the world hadn't ended for a young man who carried so much hope at that moment. He walked unhurriedly to the bus stop. It got on the nearly empty bus and plopped down in the back seat, staring out the window as the city passed in a blur. He didn't regret helping Helena, but frustration burned in his chest. What if I had just called a tow truck and left? Would I have been hired by now? Arriving home, he found his mother washing clothes in the sink. She caught his eye before he even said anything. Didn't it work out? She asked softly. He shook his head, forcing a smile so as not to worry her. I was late. Long story, she sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. Son, sometimes God closes one door to open another. Don't dwell on what you lost. Leonardo tried to believe it, but the night was long. He tossed and turned, remembering the folder with his resume, the rehearsed answers, the carefully pressed suit. It all seemed pointless. Around 3 in the morning, he finally fell asleep. The insistent ringing of his cell phone woke him the next morning. He looked at the screen and wondered at the unfamiliar number. Hello? He said, his voice still hoarse. Mr. Leonardo Silva. The voice on the other end was feminine, professional. This is Camila, from the Human Resources Department at Orion Consultoria. Could you come to a meeting with us tomorrow at 9 in the morning? He sat up in bed, uncomprehending. Sorry, but I thought the position had already been filled. Ms. Helena, our general manager, personally asked to meet with you. Leonardo's heart raced. Helena, the same woman he'd helped the day before. He almost asked, but suppressed his curiosity. Yes, of course, I'll be there. When he hung up, he stared at the ceiling for a few seconds, trying to process it. It didn't make sense. How had she, a director of one of the largest companies in the country, discovered his name? Had he left some clue? The next day seemed far away, but he already knew he couldn't make a mistake this time. He picked up his suit, ironed it again, shined his shoes, reviewed his resume, and even practiced how to smile without looking nervous. That night, unlike the previous one, there was no sadness, but a strange anticipation. He didn't know what to expect from this meeting. He only knew that, somehow, fate was giving him a second chance. The next morning, Leonardo woke before his alarm. The sky was still grey, and the city seemed suspended in the rare silence of the early hours. He carefully put on his suit, straightened his tie, and took a deep breath in front of the cracked mirror. Today is different, he muttered to himself. This time, he left home more than an hour early. He didn't want to risk being even the slightest bit late. The address Camila from HR had given him wasn't the Orion Consultoria building, but an elegant coffee shop downtown. This intrigued him even more. When he arrived, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and warm bread invaded his nostrils. The tables were polished wood, the lighting was warm, and the place had a calm atmosphere, as if isolated from the noise of the city. Leonardo chose a table near the window, and watched the street scene. And then, at 8:55 a.m., the door opened. He recognized her immediately, Helena, the woman he'd helped the day before. Today, she was even more impeccable, navy blue blazer, neatly styled, hair, an air of confidence that filled the entire room. But what caught his attention most was the smile she gave him as soon as she saw him. "Leonardo," she said, extending her hand. "I'm so glad you came." He stood quickly, shaking her hand. With some embarrassment, "Ms. Helena, I didn't expect that I would be the CEO of Orion," she added with a slight laugh. "I suppose not." They sat down, and Helena ordered 2 coffees. The waiter served them quickly, and she leaned forward slightly, looking him in the eye. "Yesterday, I was late for an important meeting. My car broke down, and honestly, I was at my wit's end. So many people passed me, but no one stopped. You stopped. Even though you knew you had something important to do." Leonardo shrugged, trying to hide his nervousness. "I couldn't leave you there alone. And because of that, you missed your interview," Helena said, her tone a mix of admiration and regret. "When I found out why, I went to reception and asked for your resume. I read it carefully. You have potential, Leonardo, real potential." He was silent for a few seconds. He never expected that simple gesture of helping someone would become the center of such a conversation. "Thank you. But I thought they'd already chosen someone else for the position." "We did," she replied, with a smirk. "But after I learned about your attitude, I changed my mind. Character isn't something you can teach, and for me, it's worth more than any line on your resume." Leonardo felt his chest warm. It wasn't just about getting a job, it was about being recognized as someone with value, regardless of where they came from. Helena leaned back in her chair and concluded, "If you want, the position is yours. And besides, I want to personally guide you in your growth within Orion. People like you are missed in the corporate world." Leonardo took a deep breath. He knew he was facing one of those moments that change lives forever. The following Monday, Leonardo stood in front of the immense glass building of Orion. He looked up, observing the structure that seemed to touch the sky. Before, that building had intimidated him. Now, it seemed like a gateway to a future he had never imagined so near. He wore the same suit he'd worn the day of the missed interview, but this time, his body carried a different energy. He climbed the front steps, feeling that each step brought him closer to a new chapter. At the reception desk, the same woman who had given him the bad news weeks earlier smiled differently. "Good morning, Mr. Leonardo. Welcome to Orion." She handed him a brand new badge engraved with his name. His heart beat faster. Passing through the turnstile with that badge was like crossing an invisible border between the past and the future. Helena was waiting for him on the 15th floor. Her office was spacious, with windows overlooking the entire city. "Ready to start?" she asked. "More than ever," Leonardo replied, trying to contain his nervousness. She introduced him to a few managers and teammates. Many greeted him curiously, whispering quietly. He knew his story had already spread through the halls. The guy who caught the CEO's attention through an act of kindness. Leonardo was assigned to the administrative sector, where he would be assigned the most basic tasks at first: scanning documents, organizing files, reviewing spreadsheets. To some, it might seem like small work, but to him, it was a chance to learn every detail, and learning was all he wanted. During lunch, Helena invited him to sit with her in the company cafeteria. It wasn't common for a director to have lunch with new employees, and this generated even more chatter. "I want you to get to know the company inside out," she said. "But above all, I want you to understand that your journey to this point is as important as where you end up." Her words resonated deeply. He'd always felt like someone who needed to prove himself to be accepted. For the first time, he felt someone believed in him before he'd even proven anything. At the end of the day, when the elevator took him back to the ground floor, Leonardo realized he was smiling. Not because of the salary or the badge, but because of the certainty that this opportunity had come not only from hard work, but also from a choice made in the middle of the street, in front of a broken-down car. And deep down, he knew this was just the beginning. Leonardo's first weeks at Orion were intense. He arrived early, before many employees, and only left when the office lights were already starting to dim. He wasn't doing this to impress, it was simply a thirst for learning. Each completed spreadsheet, each revised report, was another piece in the puzzle he wanted to master. His colleagues soon realized he wasn't just the newbie the director recommended. One morning, one of the analysts, Marcelo, was worried because he had to submit a cost report and the system was glitching. Leonardo, who had been watching from afar, approached. "Can I try?" he asked. That's pretty technical." Marcelo hesitated, but the pressure of the deadline prevailed. "Okay, go ahead." In a few minutes, Leonardo manually reorganized the data, cross-referenced information, and delivered a flawless file. Marcelo stared at the screen in disbelief. "Man, you saved my day." These small acts began to add up. Whenever someone needed help, he was there, ready to listen and find solutions. Helena, even with a busy schedule, made a point of calling him for quick chats in the late afternoon. "Are you adapting well?" he asked. "More than I imagined. It's all new, but every day I feel more capable." One day, during a team meeting, a project was stalled due to a lack of ideas for reducing costs without compromising quality. The managers discussed possibilities, but nothing seemed feasible. Leonardo, sitting discreetly in the corner, excused himself to speak. "What if we redesigned the flow using local suppliers? It would reduce transportation, deadlines, and costs." Silence fell for a few seconds. One of the managers quickly wrote it down. "That could work," he murmured. At the end, Helena looked at him and smiled, as if to say, "That's what I was talking about." It didn't take long for talk about the new talent to circulate through the corridors. Some colleagues admired his dedication, others turned up their noses, thinking he was sucking up to the boss. But Leonardo knew he wasn't there to please everyone. He was there to build the future he'd always dreamed of. One Friday night, the office almost empty, Helena showed up at his station. "Leonardo, next week I want you to participate in a project presentation for an important client. Don't worry, it'll be with me, but I want you to see how things work." At a strategic level, he felt butterflies in his stomach. "I really appreciate your trust. You're learning fast. I want you to keep it up." Leonardo left that day feeling like he was one step closer to something much bigger. And deep down, he knew that every effort he'd made since joining Orion was preparing him for a decisive moment. The following week arrived like a whirlwind. Since Monday, Leonardo dedicated himself to understanding every detail of the project he would present alongside Helena. He spent hours reviewing spreadsheets, studying old reports, and researching the client. On Thursday, the day of the meeting, he woke up earlier than usual. Nervousness mixed with excitement. He put on the sharpest suit he owned, adjusted his tie, and looked at himself in the mirror. "Let's show you that you deserve to be here," he said to himself. The client, a multinational technology company, occupied a meeting room on the top floor of Orion. The room was spacious, with a long glass table and windows offering panoramic views of the city. Helena was impeccably dressed, exuding confidence. In every gesture, upon entering, she briefly introduced Leonardo. "This is Leonardo Silva, part of our administrative team. He was directly involved in analyzing the data we'll be presenting today." Leonardo felt all eyes turned to him. He took a deep breath and maintained his composure. The meeting began with Helena explaining the general proposal. She then handed the floor to Leonardo to present a specific part of the project, precisely the one where he had found a solution to reduce costs by using local suppliers. He stood up, clicked to change the slide, and began speaking. At first, his voice was slightly shaky, but as he explained the numbers, graphs, and projections, he gained confidence. The proposal not only reduces costs by 18%, but also strengthens the relationship with local suppliers, which can generate tax benefits and increase delivery speed, he concluded. When she finished, there was a brief silence, followed by a nod of approval from the multinational's purchasing director. "That's a smart approach. Have you considered every possible scenario?" he asked. Leonardo answered without hesitation, showing he had prepared for any questions. At the end of the meeting, the client shook Helena's hand and said, "Deal. That's exactly what we were looking for." As the client left, Helena turned to Leonardo, her serious expression transforming into a genuine smile. "You did impeccably. It didn't seem like it was your first time at a presentation like this." The pride he felt at that moment was overwhelming. It wasn't just praise, it was confirmation that he was valuable, that he wasn't there by luck or a charitable act, but because he deserved it. That night, when he got home, he told his mother how it had been. She hugged him, overcome with emotion. "I knew this day would come, my son. You're just getting started." Leonardo knew he was on the right path, but he also sensed that greater challenges lay ahead and that he would need all his strength and humility to face them. The weeks following his successful presentation were marked by praise and respectful glances in the hallways of Orion. Even those who had previously distrusted him began to recognize his effort. But, as Leonardo would soon learn, in the corporate world, recognition comes with new responsibilities and pressures. One Monday morning, Helena called him for a private conversation in her office. "Leonardo, we have a serious problem. One of our biggest clients is unhappy with an ongoing project. The manager in charge is sick, and the team is overwhelmed. I want you to closely monitor this account." His eyes widened. "Me, but I've never managed a project this size. That's why you'll be working directly with me. I want you to learn and, at the same time, help resolve this situation. You have the ability to handle pressure and think practically." Leonardo knew this was a vote of confidence, but also a test. He accepted without hesitation. The project in question involved a logistics company, and the problem was simple to understand but complex to solve. Constant delays in delivering contracted services, customers complained, fines piled up, and a tense atmosphere among the teams. In the first few days, Leonardo immersed himself in reports, emails, and meetings with exhausted employees. He discovered that the root of the problem lay in poor communication between departments, which caused important information to get lost along the way. One afternoon, during a heated meeting, one of the supervisors complained, "Everyone here just points out the problem, but no one offers a solution." Leonardo took a deep breath and said, "Then let's do things differently. Starting today, each team will record their pending issues and propose solutions in a shared system. This way, everyone has access, and no one works in the dark." The idea seemed simple, but it was like opening a window in a closed room. Within a few days, information exchange improved, and deliveries began to be on time. Helena followed everything closely, but let him lead the meetings. One day, at the end of one, she said in a low voice, "See, you have more leadership than you realize." Despite the progress, Leonardo still faced resistance from some veterans, who disliked the idea of a newbie coordinating processes. He handled this by maintaining respect and focusing on results, showing he was there to contribute, not to compete. After 3 weeks, the reports showed a 30% reduction in delays and a significant improvement in customer satisfaction. When Helena presented the numbers to the board, she made a point of giving Leonardo the credit. He left that room feeling like he had taken a career leap. But he also knew that with each step he took upward, the responsibility only increased, and the next challenge could be even greater. The success with the logistics company's account made Leonardo's name even more prominent within Orion, but along with the recognition came a delicate problem he never imagined he'd face. It was a rainy afternoon when Helena called him into her office with a serious expression. "Leonardo, I need you to look at this." She slid a file toward him. Inside were copies of contracts, invoices, and internal emails. "We discovered that one of our managers approved expenses that made no sense and altered reports to hide the difference." Leonardo leafed through the papers, feeling his stomach tighten. This was no small mistake. It could tarnish the company's image and generate a scandal. "And the worst part," Helena continued, "is that he has a lot of influence here. If this situation gets out, it could turn into a political war." She took a deep breath before adding, "I want you to help me organize the evidence and conduct a discreet audit, but that means we'll have to act quietly. And if he finds out, he'll try to defend himself by attacking you." Leonardo was silent for a few seconds. Part of him wanted to refuse after all. It was a huge risk, but another part knew he couldn't ignore something so serious. "I'll help," he replied firmly, "but let's do this right." Over the next few days, he worked late, reviewing documents, cross-referencing data, and putting together a timeline of the embezzlement. The more he investigated, the more he realized the scheme was long-standing and well-planned. One night, while organizing files, he received an anonymous message on his corporate email. "Be careful where you're getting into. This isn't your problem." His heart raced. It was proof that someone knew about the investigation. The next day, one of his colleagues, visibly hostile, commented loudly in the break room, "There are people here who think they're heroes, but they'll end up without a job." Leonardo pretended not to hear, but the tension was growing. Helena called him back and made it clear, "If you want to leave now, I understand. You've already done more than anyone would." "No," he replied. "I didn't come here to turn a blind eye to wrongdoing." The internal audit lasted another 2 weeks. When they finally gathered all the evidence, Helena called a meeting with the board. The accused manager tried to defend himself, claiming persecution, but the documents were too clear to leave any doubt. The decision was unanimous. He would be removed immediately. At the end of the meeting, Helena approached Leonardo. "You not only helped save the company from a huge loss, but you also showed that integrity is non-negotiable." He felt a mixture of relief and exhaustion, but above all, the certainty that, no matter how high he climbed, he would never compromise his principles. Months had passed since the internal scandal was resolved. Orion not only regained its credibility, but further strengthened its own culture of transparency. Helena made a point of publicly acknowledging Leonardo's role in this process. At a general company meeting, in front of over 100 employees, she said, "When I met Leonardo, he wasn't at Orion. He was on the street, helping someone he didn't know, expecting nothing in return. It was this attitude that led me to bring him here. Today, he is living proof that character and competence can go hand in hand." Applause filled the room, and Leonardo felt a lump in his throat. He'd never enjoyed being the center of attention, but he knew that moment wasn't just about him, it was about the message his story carried. Shortly thereafter, Helena called him into the office. "Leonardo, I want you to take on a management role in the department. You've already shown that you know how to lead and that you're capable of making difficult decisions." He was speechless. This was more than a promotion. It was confirmation that all his hard work, ever since he balanced studies with hard work, had paid off. With the raise and job security, Leonardo was able to fulfill some long-held dreams. He renovated the small house where he lived with his mother, bought new furniture, and even paid for a specialization course. But what he was most proud of was the project he'd begun to implement, a mentoring program for young people from the outskirts of the city. On weekends, he gathered teenagers to talk about careers, study together, and teach them about financial planning. "I know the world will try to tell you that you don't have a chance," he told them, "but I'm proof that with effort, courage, and a little kindness, you can get anywhere you want." Years later, sitting in his new office overlooking the city, Leonardo received a visit from Helena. She entered with the same confident smile as always. "Remember the day you stopped to help me on the street?" "How could I forget?" he replied. "Yes, that was the day that changed my perception of what truly matters. And, from what I can see, it changed your life, too." Leonardo looked out the window, remembering all the choices that had brought him here. The missed interview, the race against time, the broken car. Everything seemed so distant and, at the same time, so present. He smiled and said, "Sometimes, we think we're losing something big, but, in fact, we're gaining something much greater." And deep down, he knew his legacy wouldn't just be his professional success, but the positive impact he would leave on people's lives, just as Helena had done for him.